Dilip was a freelance visual effects artist in Mumbai. His most prized possession sits right here, a massive, custom-built, titanium-encased rendering server. High-end visual effects require a staggering amount of computing power. Over the years, Dilip had poured every rupee of his savings into building this single, ultra-powerful machine. It was the sole engine of his livelihood. Without it, he couldn't work. When Dilip landed a lucrative 6-month contract in London, taking the heavy equipment on the flight simply wasn't an option. He needed a safe place to store it, so he turned to his former boss, Mr. Mahajan. Mahajan owned a large, climate-controlled production studio nearby and happily agreed to keep the machine safe. By leaving his hardware behind, Dilip surrendered his leverage. He was now entirely dependent on the honesty of a man who already outranked him in wealth, status, and influence. 6 months later, Dilip returned to Mumbai and went straight to the studio to retrieve his server. But Mahajan had a problem. During Dilip's absence, he had plugged the machine in. Once Mahajan realized how much processing time and money the powerful server saved his own business, he decided he was going to keep it. Mahajan put on a tragic face, sighed, and delivered his excuse. The monsoon season had brought a massive infestation of street rats into the storage room. According to Mahajan, those rats had completely devoured the server. The fans, the motherboards, and the solid titanium casing, all eaten. This chart contrasts the maximum bite force of a common street rat on the left with the yield strength required to puncture solid titanium on the right. The biological limits of a rodent do not overlap with the engineering reality of aerospace-grade metal. Mahajan's excuse was a blatant, insulting lie. Dilip knew immediately that rats don't eat circuitry and metal. But instead of losing his temper or threatening a lawsuit, Dilip simply nodded. He looked at Mahajan and calmly agreed that no one can control the forces of nature. Dilip did not submit, and he did not yell. He took a deliberate, tactical pause. By refusing to show anger, he denied Mahajan control over the narrative. Relieved that his ridiculous story had worked, Mahajan offered Dilip a cup of tea. Dilip accepted, then casually mentioned he had an errand to run down at the Bandra Bandstand Promenade. He asked if Mahajan's 15-year-old son, Rohan, could tag along to help carry some heavy bags. Eager to keep Dilip placated, Mahajan sent the teenager with him. Dilip didn't have any bags to carry. He walked Rohan straight into an upscale gaming lounge, bought him an unlimited arcade pass, and told the teenager to enjoy himself for the afternoon. Dilip had intentionally isolated his former boss's most prized asset, and he did it without putting the boy in any physical danger. By ensuring Rohan was completely safe, surrounded by arcade cabinets and security cameras, Dilip removed immediate physical stakes from the equation. This focused the upcoming confrontation entirely on the logic of Mahajan's own claim. An hour later, Dilip sprinted back into Mahajan's studio alone. He burst through the doors, looking completely out of breath, feigning intense, breathless panic. He cried out that a disaster had struck. While he and Rohan were walking along the ocean, a giant seagull had swooped down from the sky, grabbed the teenager by the collar, and flown away with him over the Arabian Sea. Mahajan sprang from his chair, face red with fury. Look at this scale diagram. It measures the maximum lifting capacity of an average seagull, which tops out at a few hundred grams, against the 60-kilogram weight of a teenager. As Mahajan violently pointed out, a bird lifting a human is physically impossible. The frantic look vanished from Dilip's face. He dropped the act entirely, folded his arms, and stared his former boss dead in the eye with a level, unwavering calm. "Is it, sir?" Dilip asked. Because in a city where common street rats can entirely consume a solid titanium rendering server, a seagull can easily carry away a teenage boy. Dilip had perfectly cornered his former boss in a reality of Mahajan's own making. There was no escape route. Mahajan couldn't expose Dilip's lie without simultaneously admitting to his own. The room fell completely silent. The sheer absurdity of the situation crushed Mahajan's bluff. Exposed and ashamed, the wealthy studio owner looked down and muttered that he would have his tech team deliver a server to Dilip's apartment immediately. Dilip smiled politely. He thanked his former boss and promised he would call the seagull and instruct the bird to drop Rohan off safely at the arcade. Dilip successfully reclaimed his incredibly valuable livelihood from a vastly wealthier opponent. He achieved this without hiring a single lawyer, without escalating to violence, and without ever raising his voice. Dilip won because he used a framework known as strategic reciprocity. When you are dealing with a bad faith actor, attempting to debate the facts is a losing strategy. This flowchart breaks down exactly why. Look at the top path. When you try to use traditional arguments against a manipulator, you enter an infinite loop of emotional escalation. They want you angry because anger allows them to reframe you as the aggressor. The bottom path shows the alternative. Strategic reciprocity bypasses the emotional loop entirely and drops straight into a logic trap. Instead of fighting their lie, you explicitly accept it. You take their absurd logic, mirror it, and apply it to a completely new scenario. This forces a binary dilemma upon the manipulator. They either have to validate your ridiculous claim, or they have to invalidate their own original lie. When you maintain strict emotional control and wield an opponent's impossible logic directly against them, you leave them nowhere to hide. You expose their greed, and you neutralize the power imbalance entirely.